They said he was born in silence. Not the kind of silence that soothes, but the kind that makes even the birds forget how to sing. When Timothy Caldwell entered this world in 1867, the midwife turned pale and whispered something about his eyes. She said they were too old, too knowing for a newborn, like a secret staring back at her. One that had waited centuries to speak. His cries never came. Not that day, not ever. Instead, he would simply look at you, and you would feel your thoughts unravel, like a thread pulled from the back of your mind. His father, a decorated veteran of the Confederate Army, dismissed it all as nonsense, Southern superstition, and battlefield nerves. But his mother, she knew something ancient had returned in her child, and in the following months, the house in Jackson, Tennessee became a place no one wanted to visit. Doors opened without hands. Clocks reversed time for hours at a stretch, and Timothy himself would disappear from his crib, only to be found standing in the garden staring at the sky even when it rained heavy and thick, like blood. The neighbors began to whisper. They said the Caldwells had brought something back from the war. Something not human. Something old and buried that should have stayed buried, and as the boy aged, but never changed. No growth, no speech, no illness, only more silence. They started calling him the unspoiled, the untouched by time, but there was something else. A sound no one could place. Not a voice, not a tune, but a vibration, like a low hum beneath the world itself. And it came from him, always, from him. It followed Timothy wherever he went. Even if you couldn't hear it directly, you'd feel it behind your teeth, in your bones, in the parts of you that never had names. It was said by the time he turned 7, the trees wouldn't grow near the house anymore. Their roots twisted away from the foundation, like they were trying to flee. And still, he said nothing, just watched like he was waiting for something or someone. And the truth is, he was. And we were all just catching up to the clock. He never wound. By the fall of 1874, the town of Jackson began to forget things, and not just misplacing letters or forgetting birthdays. Entire roads vanished from maps. Names disappeared from headstones. Church records turned to blank pages, as if memory itself had been hollowed out, and in the center of it all was Timothy now. 7 years old. Still the same height. Still the same face, still no voice. The local doctor, Dr. Whitmore, once, a proud, rational man, was the first to speak out. He claimed that the boy's presence was corrupting the electrical field of the town, that compasses would spin in circles if Timothy stood near, and that his shadow moved out of sync with his body. Whitmore vanished 2 weeks later without a trace. His home locked from the inside, his journals burned, except one entry left unscathed, buried beneath a floorboard, scrawled in broken handwriting. It read, "The boy is the echo of something before time and after death." Then the town turned quiet. Not normal quiet, something deeper, a thick, oppressive silence where even the wind refused to speak. And in that silence, people began seeing things. Reflections in the windows that didn't match reality. Children speaking in voices not their own, and strange bruises appearing overnight in the shape of symbols no one could translate. When they gathered enough courage to investigate the Caldwell estate, they found it surrounded by a ring of dead birds, every single one, with its eyes removed, but no blood, and Timothy was just sitting on the porch watching, waiting. He blinked once, and every candle in town extinguished at the same time. That night, the stars over Jackson disappeared for 3 hours. Oh sky, no light, just black. And when they returned, they were wrong, some of them out of place, like the sky had been rearranged. Only one man dared to speak to Timothy after that. The local preacher, Elias Gray. He said, the boy was a vessel, and the vessel was filling too. Fast he begged the Caldwells to give him to the Lord or give him to the earth, but they refused. And so the preacher walked into the woods behind the church and lit himself on fire, screaming the same phrase over and over. Not a child, not a child, not a child. The government arrived in 1875, but not the kind you'd expect. Not uniforms, not soldiers, no flags or announcements. Just 4 men in black coats carrying iron briefcases and questions that cut like scalpels. They introduced themselves only by initials and moved into the inn without paying. They interviewed every resident of Jackson, but none of the conversations were remembered, only that people came out, pale lips trembling, and unable to recall what they had been asked. One woman was found wandering, days later, whispering binary numbers into a tin can. And the mayor who tried to evict the agents suffered a seizure in the middle of a town hall meeting as every clock struck 13 at once. The men in black took particular interest in Timothy. They visited the Caldwell house for 3 nights in a row, and afterward, none of them spoke again. They would just sit on the porch in the evening, staring into the cornfields like they were listening to a sermon only they could hear. And when one of them finally snapped, he carved a spiral into his chest with a dinner fork and disappeared into the woods. No body was found. But the birds stopped flying over that patch of trees after that. And still Timothy remained untouched, unmoved. He sat at the same window every day, watching the same corner of the sky. And when his mother was asked what he was looking at, she said, "He's listening for the return signal. They're late." The agents left quietly one by one until only a single man remained, who locked himself in the inn attic for 6 days without food or water, writing symbols across the walls in chalk and whispering in a voice not his own. The barkeep said the sound coming from upstairs wasn't human, and that it made the whiskey go sour. After that night, the man vanished too, and the attic was found covered in frost, despite the summer heat. By then, the Caldwells had stopped attending town events. People crossed the street to avoid them, and the house had taken on a look of age beyond its years, like it was rotting inward at the center. And Timothy just kept watching, as if the sky were a code, and his gaze the key. The sky turned red for 6 minutes on September 3rd, 1876, and no scientific explanation was offered. No weather pattern, no atmospheric anomaly, just red thick like diluted blood stretching horizon to horizon. Not a single bird flew during that time. Not a single dog barked, and even the crickets fell silent. It was as if the whole world was holding its breath. And in that silence, Timothy Caldwell stood up, for the first time in nearly 5 years, walked outside barefoot in a straight line down Main Street, and stopped in front of the church. He stared at the steeple for exactly 3 minutes, and then collapsed without a sound. When they brought him home, his heartbeat had slowed to barely 20 beats per minute. Yet he was breathing calm and steady, like something was keeping him alive on its own terms. The doctor said his pupils were reacting to sound, not light, and when a tuning fork was struck in the next room, Timothy's eye twitched, like he was decoding a message inside the vibration. The townspeople grew afraid. Mothers clutched their children tighter. Old men kept rifles by their doors. The preacher declared that the boy was no longer human, that something ancient had borrowed his body and left the soul in storage. A vote was taken in secret. Some argued for exile. Others whispered darker solutions, but nothing was acted upon, because no one wanted to be the first to stand too close to him when night fell. The cornfields around the Caldwell house began to bend, not from wind, but in deliberate spirals, paths etched into the stalks with geometric perfection that no human hand could recreate. One of the farmhands who tried to map the patterns went missing his notebook, found in the well filled with drawings of eyes that bled smoke when burned. By this time, the town had divided into two, those who believed Timothy was a prophet and those who believed he was a gateway. Either way, no one saw a boy anymore. They saw a question that could not be answered without consequence. And all the while, Timothy sat again at his window, hands folded, eyes locked on a sky that had returned to blue, as if nothing had ever happened. The morning after the red sky event, Timothy disappeared from his bed for nearly 6 hours. The family searched frantically, but found no sign of him until late afternoon when a neighbor spotted him walking along the creek barefoot and humming a tune that chilled even the most hardened farmers in town. The song had no words, but carried a haunting melody that seemed to twist inside the listener's mind. Timothy's hands were stained with mud and something darker like dried blood, but he said nothing about where he had been or what he had done. The next day, several animals were found dead on the Caldwell farm, a calf torn apart with surgical precision, a dog drained of blood, and a cat missing its eyes. The pattern was terrifyingly precise, like Timothy was learning anatomy, not from books, but from living specimens. Harding grew desperate, fearing that the boy's curiosity had turned into obsession. He asked Timothy directly why he harmed the animals, and the boy smiled wider than ever, saying they were just experiments to understand pain and survival, that the animals didn't suffer the way humans did, and he wanted to know if people were different or just more clever at hiding their fear. The town's whispers turned to cries of terror, and a sheriff named William Crawford came to investigate, bringing deputies with him. His presence marked the beginning of a fragile alliance between science and law enforcement. But even they knew that controlling Timothy was a dangerous game, balancing between protection and provoking a monster. Timothy's calm intelligence and chilling honesty made them doubt if the boy was even human or a force born from the dark earth beneath their feet. Sheriff William Crawford listened carefully as Dr. Harding laid out the troubling evidence drawings of precise wounds, sketches of anatomy marked with notes, and a chilling pattern of deaths and accidents, all linked to Timothy Caldwell. Crawford had seen horrors during the war, but nothing like this. The sheriff was practical, a man of action, not theories, but he trusted Harding's instincts and agreed that they could not ignore the threat Timothy posed. Yet arresting a child was impossible, especially one so young and so cunning. They agreed on a plan that balanced surveillance with intervention. Dr. Harding would keep close contact with the Caldwell family, bringing medication to keep Thomas and Sarah sedated enough to reduce their risk. Meanwhile, deputies positioned themselves in hidden vantage points around the farm, ready to strike if Timothy made a move. The morning of the operation came with an eerie silence. No chickens clucked, no dogs barked. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Timothy met Dr. Harding at the door, his sleeves rolled up, his hands freshly scrubbed, his pale blue eyes, cold and calculating, but with a hint of excitement lurking beneath the surface. Timothy's polite greeting masked a dangerous anticipation. He revealed that he had used herbs to sedate his aunt and uncle, planning to test what would happen if someone trusted completely was betrayed intentionally and violently. The doctor knew the moment was close when Timothy's curiosity would become lethal, and their confrontation was inevitable. Inside the house, Dr. Harding found Thomas and Sarah Caldwell in a deep, unnatural sleep. Their breathing was shallow, their skin pale, as if death lingered just beneath the surface. Timothy spoke openly about his experiments, describing how he had drowned a little girl by holding her underwater for minutes, despite her frantic struggle. He explained how he had carefully orchestrated the death of Henrik Larsson by loosening rocks along a bluff and releasing a swarm of bees to drive him to fall. His cold recounting was chilling as he detailed each calculated step to cause suffering and death with surgical precision. The boy's voice held a strange fascination as he revealed that Jacob Mills was left to die, slowly trapped in a well with minimal water. Timothy had tested human limits like a scientist without conscience. The doctor realized that this was no mere child's fantasy, but a living nightmare, incarnate. Timothy was not only capable of violence, but took pleasure in studying pain and fear. His plans extended beyond his family. He wanted to see how someone who understood they were doomed would react, and whether they would fight or flee. Dr. Harding was drawn into a deadly game where every move was predicted, every outcome anticipated. The stakes were life and death with no room for mercy or error. Timothy's eerie calm unsettled Dr. Harding as the boy gathered knives and ropes with methodical precision, like a surgeon preparing tools. The room seemed charged with a sinister energy. Timothy asked if Dr. Harding would try to save his aunt and uncle or abandon them to save himself. His questions cut deeper than the weapons he brandished. The doctor drew his pistol steady, but aware that bullets were limited, and Timothy's plan accounted for every possibility. The boy's knowledge of weapons and anatomy was terrifyingly advanced. His pale eyes gleamed with anticipation as he described how he had learned to simulate emotions perfectly while feeling none of them. His manipulative nature was a mask, hiding a mind obsessed with control and destruction. Timothy approached his uncle with a rope, but the doctor intervened, prompting a violent struggle. The boy fought with frightening skill, speed, and cruelty, knives flashing as deputies burst in to subdue him. The fight ended, but the danger remained. Timothy's confidence that no one would believe a child capable of such horrors chilled the room. The legal system had no answers for what Timothy represented, a monster hidden behind innocence. The legal system was unprepared for Timothy's crimes, too young for adult trial, but too dangerous for a simple orphanage placement. His case sparked fierce debate among prosecutors, doctors, and scholars about responsibility and rehabilitation. After weeks of wrangling, a compromise sent Timothy to the Missouri State Hospital for the Insane, where top alienists would study him. Dr. Harding accompanied the boy, documenting his behavior, hoping to understand the darkness within Timothy, adapted quickly, mimicking emotions like a skilled actor, to deceive staff. He cried remorsefully and expressed gratitude, but beneath the mask, he cataloged human reactions to exploit later. His intelligence was chilling, paired with a total lack of genuine feeling. Dr. Harding noted that Timothy's fantasies of torture and manipulation grew more elaborate as he plotted future experiments. The boy's mind was a terrifying laboratory, testing human limits without conscience. The hospital soon became a place of fear, with unexplained deaths, injuries, and nightmares plaguing staff. Some suspected Timothy's hand behind the strange incidents. His presence twisted the ward into a shadow of dread and suspicion. Timothy's secret journal was discovered by Dr. Martha Fitzgerald, who saw beyond the childlike words to find a coded system hiding his true thoughts. The decoded entries revealed no remorse, but detailed plans for escape and further manipulation. His writings exposed a mind relentlessly calculating every move in the hospital. He feigned progress to gain trust while secretly studying security and routines. The staff tightened controls, but Timothy adapted, shifting tactics from manipulation to gathering information. Months of patience and planning led to a daring escape during a transfer under heavy guard. The official story called it a lucky break, but Dr. Harding knew better. Timothy's escape was the final step in a masterful plan, born of cold intellect and cunning. Since then, reports of suspicious deaths and accidents spread across the Midwest, matching his signature style. This was no longer a child, but a dangerous predator, refined by years of cruel study and isolation. After Timothy disappeared, Dr. Harding spent years piecing together chilling accounts from across the region. unexplained deaths, disguised as accidents, mysterious injuries and whispers of a helpful boy with unnatural calm, stirred fears that Timothy had returned. His mastery of human psychology made him a ghost who could slip through shadows unnoticed. The violent patterns persisted: heart attacks in healthy patients, falls in precarious places, and those who felt watched, even when alone. The hospital staff who encountered Timothy were haunted by nightmares and dread. The boy's legacy stretched beyond his confinement, marking an era of fear and uncertainty. Dr. Harding's journals documented these patterns and pondered the terrifying possibility that some people are born without empathy or conscience. The case of Timothy Caldwell challenged everything about childhood innocence and the limits of human evil. Timothy's story shook the foundation of psychological and legal thought in the 19th century. His case was one of the earliest detailed examinations of antisocial behavior in a child, provoking fierce debate about nature versus nurture. Many experts argued whether Timothy was born evil or made that way by trauma. Others questioned if true rehabilitation was even possible for someone like him. The legal system struggled to define responsibility for such a young but dangerous individual. The hospital where Timothy had been held became a symbol of hope and failure, a battleground between science and the darkness that lurked within the human mind. Meanwhile, local folklore grew around the abandoned Caldwell farm and the sealed cave where his sinister experiments had taken place. Fearful residents spread rumors of curses and haunted grounds, sealing the boy's legacy in both history and myth. After Timothy's escape, the trail grew cold, but unsettling reports kept surfacing across the Midwest. Strange deaths, unexplained accidents, and disappearances all bore the hallmarks of his cunning methods. Authorities struggled to connect these incidents, yet the pattern was undeniable. The boy who had once been a fragile child, now likely an adult, moved with chilling precision, leaving fear in his wake. Dr. Harding devoted his remaining years to tracking these shadows, piecing together fragmented clues that hinted at a remorseless predator who understood human nature better than anyone else. It was as if Timothy had become a living nightmare, blending into society while plotting horrors beyond imagination. His story became a dark warning about the limits of understanding evil and the dangers of underestimating what hides behind innocent faces. The Caldwell farm was abandoned after Thomas and Sarah survived, but could never return to the place haunted by memories too dark to face. The community whispered about curses and evil lurking in the sealed cave where Timothy conducted his experiments. Locals avoided the area for decades, fearing the shadows still lingered. Dr. Harding's journals were eventually donated to the Missouri Historical Society, locked away from casual eyes, but accessible to those brave enough to study the depths of human darkness. Thomas and Sarah lived under assumed names, their lives forever shaped by the terror they endured. They never had children and carried the silent weight of a nightmare that refused to end. Their story became a haunting legacy of what happens when innocence is lost and evil hides in the most unlikely form. Dr. Harding's final journal entries reveal a mind consumed by the enigma of Timothy Caldwell, a boy who defied explanation and challenged everything known about morality and psychology. The doctor feared Timothy was not a rare anomaly, but a warning of. The Caldwell farm remained abandoned for decades, a silent monument to horror and lost innocence. Locals whispered of curses and strange occurrences around the sealed cave, where Timothy conducted his cruel experiments. Animals refused to graze nearby, and an unnatural stillness hung over the land. Those who lived closest spoke in hushed tones about the boy who vanished, but left behind a legacy of fear. Thomas and Sarah Caldwell changed their names and lives, haunted by the knowledge that the child they once loved was a monster in disguise. Their silence was a shield against the terror that might return. The story of Timothy Caldwell became legend, a dark warning about the shadows hidden in the hearts of children and the fragile line between curiosity and cruelty. Dr. Harding's final journal entry revealed a chilling truth that echoed beyond the events of that era. He wrote that Timothy was not an isolated monster, but a glimpse of what humanity could become when stripped of empathy and conscience. Somewhere in America, a man may still walk free, who understands human psychology better than any expert manipulating lives, as if they were mere experiments. This story forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about innocence and evil, about nature and nurture, about what it means to be human. The boy who should have been innocent instead became a dark mirror reflecting the worst parts of ourselves. What do you think? Is there more to Timothy's story than we know? Could the evil he represented still be lurking in the shadows, waiting to emerge again? The truth is often more terrifying than fiction, and history holds secrets darker than we dare imagine. If you want more stories like this, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Share this with someone who loves mysteries as dark as this. Until next time.